Hi there, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Tony. This is my channel, Second Birth. And today I'll be looking at the second layer of the small-scale realism painting that I was working on. If you're wondering what I'm doing here, I'm just adding the solvent from that I'd used previously, the dirty solvent, into a big mason jar, and it lets all the muck settle down to the bottom over time, so you can reuse it later on. As I mentioned in the previous video, I'm currently studying on the Milan Art Institute Mastery Program, and I always start each new stage by watching the instructional video and taking down some notes of the main steps involved. It might be helpful if I remember to clean my palette after my last stage, because it sort of dries onto the glass palette that I use, and then I have to spray it with alcohol and sort of scrape it off. But the alcohol works really well, so I'd recommend having a palette like this, just a piece of glass with a scraping tool you can get from any DIY shop, and just use alcohol to soften it up and loosen it, and then it comes off nice and easy. For the rest of the setup, I just need to, we're using transparent paints, we're using transparent warms, transparent cool colours. The cool colours recede and then the sort of warm colours come forward, so it gives it more like a 3D effect. That's what that colour chart is you see there in front of me. I just sort of use that to help remember what they are, which ones I've ordered and things as well. I've got in my supplies, and I just gonna mix that with some glazing medium. Yeah, just sort of start going over what I've done previously on the previous stage, the subtraction. You put like a layer down and then you subtract out all the highlights and the lighter areas. You end up with like a black and white thing. It's got all the shadows and stuff in there and the values. Yeah, and then once that's dry, we come back to it and go over the top of that with a transparent glaze layer over that underpainting. Yeah, when we add this layer, we add it on quite generously so that there's plenty of paint there. And when we come in later on at the end of the stage, we'll add in some white opaque paint into some more of the lighter highlight areas, which kind of mixes in with the transparent paints and lightens it up. I find when it comes to painting, I'm quite new to it. I've done a good amount of sketching and charcoal and things like that, which I really enjoy. And I find I can kind of just get out of my head with it, kind of thing, and just it just sort of comes quite naturally. With painting, I'm kind of thinking about everything that I'm doing, and it's not quite at that natural stage yet, but I hope to get there with it. But I think it's just one of those things that takes a lot of practice, and you're just constantly learning and refining your skills, and I think I've got a long way to go with it, but quite pleased with what I've been able to do in such a short space of time with my painting, and I'm sure it'll get better as time goes on. Another thing that takes a bit of getting used to with these paintings is that they go through what they call an ugly stage, where you're kind of just blocking in colours or values, or everything just looks a bit rough and loose, and you work towards refinement with it. It just takes a bit of getting used to, really. You can't sort of just be a perfectionist. You've got to just sort of block things in and refine it as you go, really. Which I tend to quite like working that way anyway. I like working sort of loose and then gradually refining it until I get it. But on this one, this is only the second stage anyway. There's a third stage where we'll come back in once this is all dried, once we've finished, and we'll add in like an opaque layer over the top, and then we'll kind of refine it, add more detail, and so you should see it all gradually come together. I am finding with this one a little bit that I'm using a fairly well, it's a smallish brush, but I think it's a bit big for this because this panel's only very small. It's the only one I had. I got it free when I ordered some paints. They came in like inside the panel, and yeah, it's a nice panel. It seems like a decent quality, but it's just quite small and narrow. So I probably could have done with using a smaller brush, really. So this part here is where I start to add in the whites that I spoke about earlier. They call it scumbling. Sort of use the edge of your brush and like a dry brush, and just sort of lightly put the whites into the transparents. I'm not quite sure with this one how it's going to come out on the next stage, where I need to add the opaques in, and I'll have to come back over with a lot of whites, I think, because we've got the water and ice cubes, and so there's a lot from the subtractive underpainting that I did, a lot of white showing through from the panel behind, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to look when I go on with the next layer. Hopefully that all comes together looking good, and maybe I can just refine it a bit by coming back over with the, I think it's Van Dyke brown I used on the background. Come back over with that just to refine some edges and tidy it up a bit. Hopefully it'll come out looking good. So as you can see, it's still looking a bit loose and unrefined and sort of just blocks of colour and a bit oversaturated for now. Hopefully I'm hoping at the next stage I can get it looking good. So I hope you'll join me for the next one.